Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers of happiness, joy, and a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation, and we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
All right, Melissa. We have a guest on today who I am very excited to talk to.
Me too.
Mr. Michael Allosso. I first met Michael back in like 2013, I think. It was a while ago. He was running a Vistage workshop for my Vistage group.
Yep.
And so it was a while ago, so I don't actually remember all of the details of what he talked about. But during his talk...
He probably doesn't either.
He was getting over a cold, and he asked me, because I was hosting, and he asked me, hey, do you have any tea in the office, like hot tea? And like, I wasn't a tea drinker at the time. So I walked around the office like, hey, has anyone got some tea around here? And I came back with like this hot cup of tea. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I remember most about his workshop was the genuineness that he thanked me for that tea.
Yeah.
And I mean, as funny of a small detail as that is, it was like it stuck with me because I was like, this is such a powerful leadership lesson that he gave me with this simple, genuine thank you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That was awesome. I did get to see him a second time. He came to our visitors group a second time, and you know, Michael is in very high demand. He's like an award-winning speaker. I think he won all of the awards possible.
Yeah, he did.
But the second time he came back, I brought my camera because the smiles he creates in these groups is unbelievable. And I wanted to capture all these smiles. And again, I don't, my apologies, but I don't remember all the details of the workshop other than he and I are standing in the back of the room during one of the breaks. And he just looks over today and he goes, I love your look today. Because I had like, I mean, you know me, I'm like tech guy wearing a hoodie almost every single day. That day, I knew Michael was coming to our group. I literally dressed up. I got a little artsy. I had my camera.
What do you mean artsy? Were you wearing a crew neck sweatshirt or what?
Let's just say I was looking good, all right?
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But again, it was a simple comment. This simple gesture that just stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, you know, so beyond, you know, Michael being a speaker, you know, he's an actor, a choreographer, a director,
improv specialist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Award-winning speaker, communication expert, improv master, and what we're most interested in is a self-awareness specialist. So, it is my honor, Michael, to have you on the podcast, and
mine too.
Made a huge impact on me and my leadership style. So let's talk about self-awareness.
Well, how can I do anything? How can I go anywhere if in fact I am not highly self-aware? Highly self-aware. Wow, I didn't warm up at all today. That sounds awful. Their self-awareness like broke to my high note. JJ, that was so beautiful. Well, that's, I think, my favorite introduction I've had at least in a year. It was just beautiful. And Melissa, you reacting to it made it even more beautiful. It's like Melissa, your nonverbal is so strong. Like just having you in the room makes the room better. Because Melissa, I've been talking a lot lately about active listening, and people think active listening means, oh, I'm really listening.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. A lot of people really listen, but they frown at you.
Yes.
They furrow their brow. They become early candidates for Botox. And you, Melissa, are one of the best active listeners I've ever met. So what you do is you nod, you smile, you open your mouth, you make comments. You're like at a Baptist Southern Revival meeting. It's so, and think about what that does to the person in the front of the room.
Yeah.
Because, you know, someone who's less confident than me, i.e. anybody, who's standing in the front of the room, sees that, they're going to be better. They're going to be better. And JJ, that intro was killer, man. So it had a story, it had warmth, it had very specific details. And JJ, it made me think of that famous Maya Angelou quote, because you started, when you came out of the gate and said, I heard him in 2013 and I don't remember anything. Wow, I was really potent. Man, am I good. Wow, I'm real good. Well, that's why I loved it. It had a progression to boot, because you think, oh my God, this schlump is not giving me a good introduction. He's like decreasing my value. Not at all. It was a deeply progressive and well thought out intro that looked like you were making up as you went. So it was so authentic. And what you talked about was so deep in effect. So Maya Angelou said this thing where people may not remember what you said, they may not remember what you did, they always remembered the way you made them feel.
Yes.
And you didn't give one example, you gave two. And so I absolutely thought that you captured the essence of who I was beautifully in two little stories. And that's why I say it was one of the best intros.
Thank you.
A lot of people, when they intro me, they want to talk about all the awards.
Yeah.
And I guess they know their audience. I'll give them some slack that their audience needs to hear all that stuff. Generally speaking, for me, what I think audiences, what I know I like, is when the intro person makes a genuine and warm connection to the person they're introducing, so that they feel like they're valuing that person. Yeah. Bravo. What a great start. Man, do I feel good. I feel good. And today is James Brown's birthday. James Brown was born on this date in 1933. So
you are just
I feel good. Yeah.
You just are a plethora of details. I love it.
Melissa, I love when you dance too.
Well, and the sad part is our podcast is only audio.
I figured that.
However, we are getting the benefit of being together this morning. I love it.
Yeah, look at it. Oh, and folks, if you could see how beautiful both of these people are. Melissa and JJ fill the screen with warm smiles, beautiful visages. You're both
bless your heart.
Gorgeous. Look at that.
Bless your heart. Well, I too, which I didn't want to interrupt JJ's flow because he was just doing a great thing. But I actually saw you with Envisage twice as well. And here's what I want to just say. I have a strong personality, and I've been, aware of that my whole life. And but in that meeting, and so most people, as a female and as a strong personality, most men, particularly, at least back in the day, would pull back and be a little tentative or cautious or wade in gradually. And this is what you did, Michael. You went, Melissa. Wow. and I have like two best friends that call me Melissa. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, this is going to be so fun.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. Melissa, it's interesting. I love your statement about women. I don't know if I told either of you, I've been working a lot with the Women's President Organization over the last several years. So my background's Italian Catholic. And that's probably one of the most sexist cultures there is.
Yes.
I have two brothers. We had all male dogs. My mom was the only woman in the house. And sometimes you learn what not to do from your parents as much as what to do.
Yeah, true.
My mom was the most sexist human being I had ever met in my life. There was men's work and women's work. Men did things, women did things. And both my brothers and I married very strong women, probably as a result. I mean, you guys, we didn't even make our own beds. It was that.
Ever?
Ever. When we were in that home. It's, see what I mean? And so, and Melissa, your point's well taken. JJ, we do a strong intro with somebody and a big greeting. Generally, people praise us for our warmth, our confidence, our poise. Melissa's right. She could actually be criticized on both ends of the spectrum of being, like pushy and even been called the B word for it, all the way to the other end. Totally. Oh, mother hen, oh, soft, oh, sweetie. Like it's
so bossy.
Yeah, it's such a it really is shocking to me. Sometimes I think we've come further with racism than we have with sexism. It's really shocking how it's all very subtle too.
Yeah,
it's not
overt
harassment thing, and you see it in a room. And so I'm sort of on this tear about it. And Melissa, that is one of my favorite things about you, is that you dispel all those stupid stereotypes right away because you don't give a crap.
I don't care.
Right. You laugh, you smile. Someone thinks that makes you this or the other. That's their problem, not yours. And that's one of the reasons why you're as excellent as you are.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I have a coach who always says when someone treats you a certain way, or you have an experience with someone that makes you feel bad, or you feel bad as a result of it, she'll say, they're not showing you who you are. They're showing you who they are.
I just
think that's such a great phrase.
It's right on the money.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of self-awareness, what you just said.
Of course. Yeah.
So, Michael, I am curious. You, like, knowing you for a while, or having the opportunity to be in a couple of your workshops, some of your early work, was around, like, what is the title? You on Your Best Day, right? These are leadership things. These are like, how do you show up in your organizations? But I think more recently, you've been talking a lot more about self-awareness.
Yeah, I noticed a pivot.
Yeah, I actually, on your website, it was, self-awareness specialist. And I was like, well, that's super interesting. So, like, first off, what does self-awareness mean to you?
JJ, Aristotle said this cool thing where he said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And actors are highly self-aware. So are either of you professional actors?
No.
All right, so
not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Wait till I get my hands on both of you. So, all right, so answer me this. When I go to New York and I have to cast the lead in a musical, what skill do you think the lead in a musical might need? Any wild guesses?
Well, they probably need to be able to sing and dance a little bit.
JJ, you're a genius now. Because, JJ, why is it someone shows up for my role of the lead in a musical without a passing flirtation with the right note? It's because they are not self-aware. Self-aware actors, that's why I love actors. They know, the top ones know what they're good at and what they're not good at. They know where they fit in the universe and how they help and aid and enjoy and join that universe. And that's what self-awareness is, having that clear understanding. And to be fair, it's why actors have directors. And to address again the depth of your question with the lead in, that's why the pivot, to use your word, happened, is that we all want to know what our secret sauce is, because for me, I've reinvented myself a few times in my life, all under the umbrella of trying to make every human being I meet better because they met me. And that's why I started as a high school drama teacher. That I did that for 10 years joyfully. Sidebar, here's one of the ironies. If I seem a little down today, one of my favorite all-time students passed away on Palm Sunday, fairly suddenly. Ovarian cancer diagnosed in December, deceased in March.
Oh my goodness.
So we're having two celebrations of life, one in Seattle and one here in New England. The Seattle one I did completely virtually, spoke for 15 minutes, tried to organize other things. This one that's happening tomorrow, I've directed, written, coordinated singers, musicians. I mean, it's so the impact that Susie and I stayed friends all these years, because I was in my young 20s. She was a teenager, so there's really not that big a difference in age, and we just stayed close. She was an acupuncturist in Seattle, and an extraordinary human being. That was the beauty of being in that 10 years, to help those kids discover who they were through heightened self-esteem to heighten their self-awareness. Even though you're right, JJ, I didn't call it that back then. You're 100% correct. Then I went from there to get my Master's of Fine Arts in Directing to do what my career is, a direct, choreograph, act, which I completely immersed myself in, where you're working with actors to heighten their self-awareness so that they can make the best possible play. And so what does a director do? A director is that lens that says, whoa, JJ, you're rocking in your chair. Is that a choice? Are you doing that on purpose? Melissa and JJ, you're both nodding. Do you understand that's great active listening? Is that what you wanted to do in the scene? So it's not to make judgments. It's simply to tell data so that people say, wow, I'm rocking. I didn't want to rock.
Yeah.
Should I be rocking? I don't know. Let's figure it out. That it seems like it might be good for the character.
Yeah.
So then you make plays that impact the universe, that heighten their self-awareness. They watch the play and they ask themselves questions about who they are, who they want to be, comedy or drama.
Yeah.
Then you both might remember this part of my story, is that it was kind of by accident that I'm doing what I'm doing now. Because I believe if you are excellent at everything you do, and I mean everything, you do a podcast with Melissa and JJ, you don't say, well, I mean, it's not, is it an international podcast? Will millions be listening? I need to save myself. Oh, it's one-on-one? She's not the CEO, so I'll save my, what? No. So the 4-letter word that I've learned to delete from my vocabulary is the word just. I never say I'm just doing a podcast with JJ and Melissa. I'm just going to have dinner with Peggy tonight. No, just. Now, when you live that mantra, people want a piece of you, and they are creative, and they figure out. So it was actually through my high school drama teaching that I'm sitting here right now with you, because one of those parents turned out to, who my rehearsal room door was always open, parents would watch. One of those parents turned out to be the corporate shrink of a major utility company in the UK and New England. And he called me, I don't remember how much later it was, and he said, look, I watched how you coached my daughter Sabrina and her peers. I'm having trouble with my CEO. Can you translate that coaching to my CEO? And I have trouble with the no word, as you both know. That's why I'm here today. And I say, yeah, sure, I could do that. I hung up. Then I went and looked up what CEO meant. And then HR interviewed me for 3 straight hours in straight back chairs. And right, Melissa. And then at the end of 3 hours, Melissa, they not only gave me the CEO to coach, but the 9 VPs who were in line to be the next CEO, he had already announced that he was leaving. So there was this beauty pageant. And the rest is history.
A beauty pageant. So, that's exactly what it is.
It was a beauty pageant. And it's all of that is my heightening my self-awareness. So a lot of people helped me to heighten my self-awareness. I wouldn't have known that I could be coaching CEOs.
Yeah.
I guess on some deep level I would have, but well, for those first 10 years, if you asked me, I would have said, I'm going to teach high school theater for the rest of my life.
Yeah, interesting.
The next 10 years, I'm going to be a professional director for the rest of my life. So it's kind of exciting. You don't know what chapter is waiting for you next. And that's the excitement of building your self-awareness.
Yeah.
Melissa, to the women's issue, for instance, I've said 3 times in the last few years to women in my group, to a specific woman, I said, I watch how you speak and carry yourself. Have you ever thought about teaching groups of young women leadership? You model it so beautifully. Have you ever thought about formally creating a program where young women could benefit from your wisdom so much? And in all 3 of the instances, you should have seen the gift I gave that woman, because either she had been thinking about it or she had never been thinking about it. But clearly, she said, I could do this in all 3 instances. This is something where I could make a difference.
Yeah.
That's how you heighten other people's self-awareness.
Right.
So JJ, you see the joy in doing that?
Yeah.
And so the pivot, as you guys called it, probably wasn't as much a pivot as a heightened self-awareness. The pivot was in, yes, the marketing and how my team markets it. JJ, did I understand your question?
No, totally. I didn't, just talking through that, you just said something that had never really occurred to me, like about a director and an actor, where the director is just feeding data back to the actor.
Observation.
Yeah. And I always had pictured that relationship between an actor and a director a little bit differently.
Like a dictator.
Yes, like a dictator.
And guess what, Melissa and JJ? When I was 22, I was a dictator.
Yeah, so was I.
And why, Melissa? Because we don't have the self-esteem. Youth and ego. So
but
JJ, when I was 22. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I love that idea. And then what I was wondering was, like, I don't get to have a director follow me around in my everyday life, providing me self-awareness feedback all the time. So,
do you want one? I'm not doing anything.
It's Melissa. It only happens once a week for like a half hour. But my question is, like, how can we develop like more self-awareness if we don't have a real good, like you said, like data stream or observation coming back to us?
That's such a good question.
I've been training self-awareness specialists pretty much since 2004, when I made this, again, to use your word, pivot from doing theater all the time to starting working with businesses. So my job is to make both of you excellent self-aware specialists. So when you do that, you are then giving feedback to the universe on a daily basis. So when the barista at the coffee shop puts the little leaf on your latte, and you say to the barista, do you know how few baristas do this? And when you do it, it makes me smile, and it kind of gives me a giddy up in my day. You've heightened the barista's self-awareness.
Yeah.
So I'm creating ambassadors. One of the reasons why I accept assignments like this is I want to make a difference in the world. So I want all your listeners to be self-awareness experts as well. So when you start doing that, JJ, when you start giving that feedback, people, A, become more self-aware, and B, are more likely to give it back to you.
Yes.
So even your superficial example of talking about your clothing, I'll be the first to admit I'm vapid and shallow. I like external things. I like external pretty. I'm sitting looking at the Atlantic Ocean right now. It is taking my breath away. I thought, even though we weren't on camera today, I thought carefully about my clothing because I wanted to please the two of you. You know, it's so all those intentional things that you do in a day, it's because your self-awareness has been heightened. And so when you give to the universe gives back.
Yeah.
And so I get feedback in coffee shops. Let's take that as an isolated example pretty regularly, because as you pointed out, JJ and Melissa, I'm not afraid to tell people what I see. Yeah. So as soon as I tell people what I see, I would say 8 out of 10 times the person tells me something that they see.
Precisely. Yes. And it's created this really interesting energy and openness and willingness to participate in a way that most of the time, if unaware, we don't.
It's a really interesting thing, Michael, to say like, hey, I go compliment people in coffee shops, because there's a little bit of a, for sure nowadays, societal thing that just says, yeah, you should just pretty much not talk to other people. And
right on.
That might be some of your introversion shining out. You might want to poke that back in.
Maybe a little bit, but I don't. You guys have seen it. There is like a more, I don't know, closedness about society around like talking to strangers. We tell our kids to never talk to strangers, and then as adults, we somehow have stuck that in our brain. Don't talk to strangers. I gotta tell you, every time I talk to a stranger, it's a wonderful interaction.
JJ, I think that's deep and astute, and I would say it's been exacerbated post-COVID. That it was Absolutely. Like that pre-COVID, and people want to tell me COVID's over, and I just laugh. The ramifications of COVID I am visiting every single day, and one of them is what you just said. Like I think about Maeve. Maeve's the youngest in our brood. Maeve is 8. And so think about how old she was during COVID, wearing a mask and not being allowed to touch people.
Yeah.
And so I'm like watching like a hawk how that's impacted her interactions with people now. And so there's a tiny example with Maeve, but I think you're right. And especially let's go to gender. When a man tells a woman that he likes her necklace, some men do use that as a pickup line, as an inappropriate pickup line. So many guys, I find women are better at what I just described, JJ, than men on the external pieces. I think men and women probably are equally strong when talking about achievement, or equally weak, because it takes much more time for me to talk about your excellence in achievement than for me to say, I love your Henley, you know, that your Henley's cool. Your glasses fly to your face. Your GQ beard with a like little bit of gray in it, like makes your boy face look like you're a man at the same time. See, like most people would, no, I'm not going to say that. And the reason why they don't, you're right, JJ, I think there are real reasons. And some of the people I've coached, men especially, have not learned how to do it. So they go up to a Melissa and say, man, I love that sweater. No, that's not what you do. You didn't listen to what I suggested. And so, yes, that is inappropriate. And those men, once they make the mistake, get camera shy. Now, I won't say women, that never happens to women, but much rarer. Right. Women are much smarter about evaluating a painting on a wall, a sweater somebody's wearing, in a tone that makes the person feel that they are being praised. Guys sometimes, because I think half the time it's because either A, they're completely unself-aware, or B, because they're so chicken, they don't authentically say it in a way, and the person picks up that it's inauthentic.
Right, absolutely.
The line between like complimentary and creepy sometimes is real thin.
Right.
It's a little too close.
I'll tell you, JJ, one thing I do, for example, like Peggy's a jewelry designer. And so I will sometimes compliment a woman's earrings, which sounds creepy. But I always preface it with, wow, my wife Peggy is a jewelry designer. And she's taught me so much about how jewelry frames a face. So that whatever you're doing with your ear, I'm not smart enough to know what style it is, but it frames your face, and your face, like I'm feeling a warm reaction to your face. That does not sound like a pickup line to me.
No, not
You know what I mean? And so you do have to, there's self-awareness.
Right.
You have to think about, how am I being perceived by another human being? And so then you think about tone, you think about body language, you think about context. I won't say I've been perfect, JJ. I've made mistakes. And so when you make a mistake, when someone misinterprets, you apologize. But you know what? It's like, for me, JJ, it's like, am I going to wear shoes my whole life and never go barefoot? Because if I do, I'm never going to step on an ugly stone. I'm never going to step on gravel that could cut my feet. But I'm also never going to feel like a freshly mown lawn between my toes. The ocean, when the tide comes in, going between my toes. So take your shoes off, you know, be sincere, be self-aware when you make the mistake, which requires you get outside yourself and look at the other person and how they're receiving it.
I've noticed something as you've been talking in the last few minutes that's an interesting thing that I hadn't actually made such a drawn line between, and that is, you have been talking a lot about confidence. You've been talking about, you said self-esteem, but then you said self-confidence, and you said self-awareness. Now, that's an interesting thing to pair those two, as one doesn't exist without the other, or certainly confidence amplifies awareness, is sort of what it felt like you were saying.
Do you know, Melissa, this is what I mean about you. I've talked about this for a long time in great detail. You are the first person that has ever said that connection out loud. And I infer it over and over again. You're 100% correct. And your analysis is 100% correct. In order to be self-aware, you got to like yourself. You got to say that there's something to be aware of.
You have to like yourself. You have to like yourself. Okay, so that's actually very interesting, because I think you could be acting as an actor self. If you don't like yourself and you're trying to amplify your self-awareness, but you don't really like yourself, you are going to shy away from big portions of who you are or what you have, which would then prevent you from being fully integrated or fully aware of yourself.
I think you're right, Melissa.
That's really an interesting way to think about that.
So what we always go back to in theater is the word objective. And not objective as an adjective, objective as a noun. So whenever I coach an actor, a CEO, my children, my first question generally is, what's your objective? What are you trying to do? So why do I tell the barista that I like the leaf pattern in my latte? My objective is to make them continue to create excellence for people so that they know that what they're doing really makes a difference in other people's lives. That's my objective.
And it feels good. It feels good.
So once you clarify an authentic objective, all this becomes a little bit easier. So if I'm questioning myself, if I don't have low self-esteem today, I get on the screen and I look at the two of you and I say, oh, they're both so beautiful. I'm nowhere near as beautiful as they are. How can I even?
Yes, you are.
How can I don't even want to look at my image. So if that's what's going on in my head, I have to think about what's my objective. And if my objective is to make JJ and Melissa's podcast rock so that their listenership gets value and they want to continue a collaboration with me, if it's any one of those things, then my behavior becomes more authentic. If I'm self-aware, I can choose tactics that will help me win my objective. And then, Melissa, everything becomes authentic. What happens, Melissa, is people often evaluate authenticity based upon their obstacle. They say, like you just did it with JJ, you said, oh, you're the introvert. So sometimes introverts will say, yeah, I can't do that because I'm introverted. So, and under the guise, it's not authentic for me to do that. I say, okay, what is your objective? My objective is to make my team stronger and better. Okay, that's the authentic moment. Your introversion is the authentic obstacle. And I believe what happens, why people become less self-aware and ultimately less efficacious, is that they play the obstacle instead of playing the objective. You know, I play the obstacle today that I have to do this celebration of life tomorrow, and I'm mourning my friend. Well, that's all authentic, but it's not what my objective is today. So when I immerse myself in my objective, I can heighten my self-awareness that I am grieving, I am mourning, and at the same time, I'm able to honor Susie by celebrating a podcast with Melissa and JJ, which she would want me to do.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a lot of self-talk. Self-awareness is a little self-talk. If you want to make it more pragmatic for your listeners who are pragmatists, it's all about tactical variety to win an objective. You know who gets this the best, you guys? Are military people. Military people are often my favorite clients because look how they think. Objective, kill the enemy. Tactics, land, sea, air. Obstacle, we're fighting the war in the desert. The enemy lives in the desert. We don't. We have to modify. It's a mathematical equation. And when you break it down to math, I think it becomes easier.
Yeah, I love this call out about confidence and self-awareness because, we've talked about this a lot, Melissa. Like for me, I run these different companies, but I was like an art school kid. I was an art school dropout, in fact. So like I spent a lot of my early career in imposter syndrome. Like I have no right running software companies and tech companies, and I was never trained at any of this. I just learning as I'm walking through the burning forest here. But that really affected. I was really stuck there for a while, and it wasn't until Melissa and I would do work around self-awareness and me understanding that my like natural wiring of being introverted can actually be a real superpower. And that like I have earned this spot, and I don't need to walk around like with such a strong imposter syndrome, and that has caused a great shift for me in my life, and the way I can show up for other people and support other people, and just my own pride, self-confidence, and everything. And it really did unlock further exploration. So until I kind of got over that one thing, I wasn't really able to explore all these other things about myself in self-awareness.
That's interesting. It's
really beautiful. Introversion is a superpower, JJ. JJ, you referred to the name of my program, You on Your Best Day. Think about it. I thought very carefully about naming that. It's not you on Michael Alosso's best day. It's you on your best day. And if you guys ever get a coach, Melissa, you get a coach that says, you got to stop that loud, immediate, enthusiastic entrance you do, fire the coach. You know, JJ, if you get a coach that says, you know, you got to be more extrovert, fire the coach, man. It's not about removing from a toolbox. It's always about adding.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and look at the two of you. Melissa, you've done it at least 4 times already in this short time we've been together. You know how to go to a quiet, introspective moment that's deeply intellectual and make a connection. You got everything. JJ, introvert, schmintrovert, your introduction was no introvert's introduction. It was a glorious celebration of 2 men who met and made a connection. And you have been so confident and extroverted traditionally in this podcast. So blah, 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 blah. We we accept who we are. That's what self-awareness is.
I am the self-appointed leader of the introverts, and I want to like always promote and dispel
I'm
the myths
blow your cover
of introverts.
See, your introversion is also very charismatic.
You
know, it gives you a natural sweetness, sir. You're not what you do so well. My favorite thing about you, JJ, is that you balance confidence and humility perfectly. Like you're right at the 50-yard line all the time. And most of the coaching I do with self-awareness is that people are too much on one side or the other.
I was going to talk about humility because I'm with you. Yeah.
You get what I mean, Melissa.
Is humility would be like the other side of the coin from confidence, or not really? That's not.
Thank you for asking. No, I don't like that other side of the coin. I think they're the same thing.
Okay.
So I think it takes great confidence for you to do the introduction that you gave me today. And it takes great humility to say, this man said that about my clothing, and then I felt good about myself. That's humility and confidence in the same moment. And JJ, that's the mistake I think a lot of leaders make with self-awareness, is they compartmentalize that it's supposed to be one or the other. It needs to be both.
Yeah.
As often as you can, you need to be both. And you know, now that I said that out loud, I think that is why I love both of you. You're both good at that. Melissa, you're good at that too. It's not just JJ that's good at that. You are very good at that. And the people who hover on the 50-yard line of that, and see, again, it's harder for women than men to do this.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, good, Melissa. And Melissa, that's the way to diffuse all that kind of junk. Is that, no, I'm not going to play some, and that's what the WPO has taught me, the Women's President Organization. And by the way, the first time I did a WPO meeting, it was in Minneapolis, of all places.
Was it?
Oh, I loved every second of it. I could have lived with those women forever.
I know, it's just like I did a Freemasons event, and there were like 300 men and me, and I had a blast.
Well, isn't that funny? Yeah. And I said to them, why do you hire a guy? And they said, you're so stupid, dumbass. Why do we want to just hear from women? We need to hear men's perspectives too.
I asked the same thing. Why did you
Melissa, what
me?
you just did, maybe not. I love that. See, that's confidence and humility at the same time. You put a little confident swagger, but I have the humility to say, I'm not going to play a woman card.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anything. That doesn't solve any problems.
Yeah. Right.
Beautiful. It's like great communication.
So I have a little bit of a question in this, because I really like this idea that we're talking about as we're talking confidence and humility. And I love that you said the 50-yard line, because it is a balancing act. And I think that you can see somebody who is goes too far on the humility side, and it becomes they look disingenuous, or maybe it just completely robs them of their power. And I don't mean power as in ego. I mean just power as in their air, their energy,
presence,
their presence, right? And to call that out is such an interesting thing. But I love your question. What is your objective? Because JJ and I are constantly in the self-awareness journey. We've been at this now for many years. We've had our podcast for 4 years. And every single week we have conversations around these things. And I feel like one of the things we're always trying to do is figure out what are practical ways to start making effort in this development. And I think this question that you asked is fascinating and perfect. What is your objective? I never thought of it as simply as that, but it's really that basic question.
Yeah. So Melissa and JJ, since I've last seen you, I keep wanting to get better, heighten my self-awareness. So I said to myself, what is it that I could create that would really be me at my most excellent? So I created a retreat up here on the southern coast of Maine for 2.5 days. I've done 3 of them. I'm doing the 4th one at the end of September, where we do 2.5 days of heightened self-awareness. I take between 10 and 18 leaders, and I bring them to this high-end farm up here in southern Maine, where there are goats, chickens, rabbits, and this gorgeous barn in quotes, that sits on the property that has a stage in it. That's really a theater. And we deeply go into self-awareness. And so it has to be lots of tactics. And the purest and best tactic is, what is your objective? So all 10 to 18 people have to put on video what their objective is for coming to the retreat. So I have it on video, I study it, and I keep it with me the whole 2.5 days. And then each time they add or want to work on something, I remind them of why they said they were there. Now they can change their mind and they can add to it, but they have to say that out loud. Some people come because they want more material to write their book. Some people come because they're painfully humble and they know that. One guy came because he thinks he's humble and everyone in his job has told him he's an arrogant jerk. And so he said, what is this, Michael? I think I'm lovely and warm. So for 2.5 days, we worked on making him diffuse the arrogance so that it was more of who he saw himself underneath. He knew. It's like, talk about wonderful. He was one of my favorite people that ever took the retreat, because talk about self-awareness. His self-awareness was off. And by the end of it, oh my gosh, you talk about progression, because the last thing everyone does is they have to say what their takeaway is in the form of what they're taking away. And so you talk about the epitome of self-awareness. So what he did, he stood on the top of the stage and he said, when I came here, I thought I knew everything about myself and that I was on top of the world. He then went down a step and said, by the end of the first night, I was kind of wondering if that was the case. He went down another step.
Oh, beautiful.
By the end of the full first day, I said, I got a lot to learn. Then he went to the bottom step and sat and said, I look around this room and I say, everyone brings more gifts than I do. And how blessed am I to be in a room with all these people. Then he went around and he gave each person a sentence or two about how they impacted him.
Wow, that's beautiful.
The place exploded, like this guy, that's the journey of self-awareness. So the big question you guys have asked repeatedly is, how do you increase your self-awareness? Is we all need those external eyes to tell us. And so why my business has gotten so great lately is that I've figured out this is my secret sauce.
Yes. Oh, so without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, you think about my chapters, Melissa, a blue collar kid. So neither of my parents graduated from the 10th grade. Talk about imposter syndrome, JJ. Like when I first stood in front of my first group of CEOs, the little Michael on my shoulder saying, why the heck are you here, dude?
Yeah.
Like, who the heck are you? You got to flick that guy off and then go with what you got. So from there, you're a little, you think you're introverted? Both my brothers, big multi-sport jocks. My father, strapping macho fireman. And then me, watching I Love Lucy on the floor, And so I started gathering data about people. Flash forward to my high school drama teacher. Have either of you ever taught high school drama? It's like kids, if you don't, like they'll say, Mr. Allosso, in scene 3, I handed the water bottle to Melissa like this today. Yesterday, I handed it like that. Which do you like better? I better pay attention here. So think about the evolution of me heightening my own self-awareness, that this was my strength. You're right, JJ, I wasn't calling it self-awareness. I had to increase my self-awareness to understand what my secret sauce was.
Yeah. Sometimes external forces push us to new heights of awareness when we aren't planning on it. And a lot of times I think we go kicking and screaming because we're terrified of change.
Yes, the terror is great.
Yeah.
You just need to retreat. People are terrified.
Absolutely.
We started a Thursday night, and it starts with a cocktail party in the high part of the property, and everyone thinks, oh, this is just a meet and greet. And then we walk down to the barn, and once we get in the barn, wham! I do an exercise right away.
That's so fun.
That is funny. I remember that first workshop you did for my group. I was pretty new to Vistage at that point, and I remember our chair, Don Kiley, telling everybody, Michael's coming next month. You all got to show up. And I was like, why would anyone not show up? And it was it was that because he knew that
yes, because he knew
the foreshadow on Michael Allosso showing up was a bunch of uncomfortable C-level folks that don't like to get challenged, and they're just going to be conveniently busy that month.
And if they're not, and they're sitting in the room, they are profusely sweating.
Talk about wiggling around in your chair. That's your secret sauce. Making grown men wiggle around in their chair.
Well, sometimes I do groups like 8, 9, 10 times, and then I you both know I keep copious notes about everybody. And so sometimes I look and I say, he was there the first time I came, and then missed the next 6 in a row. What does that mean? Well, and the chair will say, well, he was sick this time. He went on a trip. 6 in a row? I don't know.
He's terrified. That's the real answer. Big, scary owner, terrified.
Right, of little skinny Michael Allosso from Boston.
I mean, isn't that one of the core things here is it is kind of scary to work on yourself. It is scary.
We talk about that, don't we? It is,
It's people, and we talk about being more self-aware, but when it really comes down to brass tacks and you start the journey of working on yourself, there's some things like that you might come across that aren't so great, and you got to deal with those.
Yeah.
You're right, JJ. I'm making light of it, and the truth of the matter is I have incredible admiration and respect for someone who puts themselves through that process.
Me too.
That is a real earnest desire to get better, which is such a beautiful thing. And you talk about confidence, humility. To come and do something like that is the epitome of confidence and humility. Yeah. You have to have the confidence to say,
which
I'm
would be courage. Which would be courage.
Which is one of the things I value the most. I think that's why I love military people so much, is because their life is about courage.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that when I think about that word courage, and specifically with military people, it's you're marching into battle, and one of the most amazing things about that act is the vulnerability.
Yes, sir.
And when we talk about self-awareness, you have to be vulnerable and be in that more vulnerable position. A lot of the times we don't like that. Right? We don't want to be vulnerable. So we protect ourselves or entertain ourselves or distract ourselves so we don't have to be in that position.
Yeah. Highly courageous. And see, being an actor, when you're an actor, you get maybe 1 out of 50 things you audition for. So, 49 out of 50 times people are telling you you're not very good in your head, even though they might cast, someone older, someone younger, someone fatter, someone thinner, someone darker, someone lighter, or their friend, and you never had a chance anyway. You do all the self-talk, I'm terrible, I'm terrible. When you put yourself through that, it really toughens you up. And that's why, again, I have great respect for actors and the theatrical process of auditioning.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where we separate a lot of, to remind you both, I taught at Boston Conservatory for 15 years, which was preparing people to go out into show business who are highly talented. The ones who made it were exactly as you described, JJ, those people who allowed themselves to be vulnerable. And when they got the rejection, it only made them stronger and more courageous. The ones who fell apart when that rejection happened, they're no longer in show business.
Right.
It's
right.
So it's heightened self-awareness.
Yep.
It's not what you're cut out for.
Yeah,
and it's the confidence again, though. There it is again. There's that walking together, that confidence, because if you lose confidence over life experiences, or you put yourself out there and it doesn't work, or someone doesn't treat you well or something, and your confidence comes down a step or two as you're giving that great visual with that man in the barn, it also opens you up. Right? But sometimes that scares people and they just close, and maybe it's only for a little while to recover. It's just an interesting thing to think about the human nature and how confidence can breed so many other growth opportunities if it's done in an aware state.
So good. And that's what coaching's about.
Yeah.
You find all the tactics. So your objective, it might be to build someone's confidence. Then tactically, how am I going to do it? So we've been talking about that for the whole hour.
Yeah.
One tactic I use especially for religious people, is it says in Matthew, don't hide your light under a bushel. Now, even non-religious people enjoy the Bible as literature. And so think about that. If you have an incandescence and you have a light and I notice it, what do you need to say? So JJ, what did you say when I said, gee, I like the way you're dressed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Confidence and humility. See, the arrogant person would say, oh, no, I'm not. Oh, it's just something I threw. Well, wait a minute. You're dishonoring me now.
Yes,
you think you're being humble? I think you're being arrogant.
Yes.
You're dishonoring me. It's again that right on the same page.
Yeah.
And so, JJ, this is what I mean about your self-awareness, that you're so strong. You knew exactly how to handle that moment. You said, thank you.
Thank you.
Not, I know I'm wonderful, and nor, oh, no, Michael, you're stupid. It's, thank you. With humility, it takes confidence to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said something really interesting about, the actors and auditioning and the impact that rejection can have on people. And we see this a lot. And one of the lessons that I took away from art school is, we would, say have design class, and that week our assignment we'd go have to do a design, and then the next week we'd come in, we'd hang them all up on the wall, the whole class, and we'd one by one go critique everybody's piece of art.
That sounds so scary.
Right? And it was just here's why this one's crappy. Here's why this one doesn't make sense. You're like, why are
it doesn't make sense.
Lines aren't even straight.
It's art.
Yeah. But the lesson that I took away from a very early age is that I am not my art. Right? That art is a temporary expression, but it is not fundamentally me over and over and over again. And we see this a lot, right? A lot of people are too attached to their job, to their vocation, to the persona that they have kind of built up around themselves, and really
and their titles.
Yeah. So detachment is an interesting aspect of self-awareness. What do you think about that?
I love you. That's what I think about that. Do you know the musical Sunday in the Park with George? It's about Georges Seurat that Stephen Sondheim wrote. So the top of Act 2 is a song called Putting It Together. Barbra Streisand had Sondheim rewrite it for her Broadway album so she could talk about the same thing with theater. And there's a lyric that says, when you go on being exposed to the public. And then what Seurat does and what Barbara does in the album says, wait a minute, when your work is being exposed, not you. And that's the vulnerability of the artist, JJ, what you described. And that's why theater people, I think we have to be the most vulnerable because it's harder to separate. You at least do have the painting that isn't you.
Oh, right.
It is me.
Is you.
It is me. And it's the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. And I think that's one of the blessings that I have. It's that experience underneath has made me better at what I do and given me a uniqueness. But that is the beauty of art. It's when you were describing, like I've been through that. Like you go to acting school, oh my gosh, you do an exercise, and then the whole class picks you to pieces. Like you know the musical Chorus Line, the song Nothing. Every day for a week we would try to feel the, and it's about a woman. Her name's Morales, who the professor and all the kids make fun of her and say she's not being an ice cream cone, that theirs was better. And how it just crushed her self-esteem. And then finally, it's a beautiful story song. At the end, she says, I made a decision. This class was nothing. Yes. I'm leaving the class. Yeah. And when I do, I'll become an actress. And so fabulous. It's just a brilliant song that talks about what you just said, brother.
That is fabulous. You could use that statement. You could use that idea in almost anything that you feel has got you trapped.
Yeah.
Right on. You could simply frame it in that way. That's fascinating.
Perfect.
So, Michael, what sort of parting thoughts do you have for our audience around developing self-awareness and their journey?
Michelle Obama said this great thing, JJ, where she said, be grateful for what you have and be ready to share it when the time comes.
That's really beautiful.
And it is beautiful. And to be fair to the universe, it's not a completely original thought from Mrs. Obama. It's it's actually go back to the New Testament. I think it's Luke 12. That famous passage that says, those of us who are blessed with much is expected. So JJ, parting thought might be, look in the mirror and appreciate all the good things you got. Why you are so lucky to be you. I know that sounds cliche and gratitude maybe gets overused.
We talk about that a lot.
Because Melissa, once you start there and say, look how lucky I am to be me. Like fewer than 20% of the people in the world have clean drinking water every day for crying out loud. And we, especially us as Americans, have so much. And if you just start looking in the mirror and say, what do I have that's a gift? And it is my ethical responsibility to share that gift, because that's what a gift is. You don't hold on to a gift, you give it away. That's the definition of a gift. I think the journey to self-awareness then can begin.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful, Michael.
Thank you so much for saying yes.
Love you both. I'd say yes to anything. I can't wait. Next time we come to Minnesota, you want to go to the Guthrie together and dissect a play? Wouldn't that be fun for the three of us to do that and then spend an hour and a half just talking about it? It'd be so good. I love you both. Thank you for the privilege of being with you and the respect you offer me.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Love you too, and love you for everything that you're doing for this world. It's a beautiful thing.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well. Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them.
We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring.